Hello, Matt.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks for joining me. You have been putting out I've been noticing a newsletter, the Critical Hit Parader for a while, and I think you've found this intersection between music and role-playing games.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people sort of spend time in that intersection. And I've been passionate about both RPGs and music for basically my whole life. And I had kickstarted a zine. I'd wanted to put out a Blue Oyster Cult themed adventure that I had written. And thanks actually quite a bit to listening to RPG ramblings and hearing all of your guests who have kickstarted things and created zines. It got me inspired to actually publish it. And so I did that last year, and I wanted a way to communicate to people who had signed up for the Kickstarter. So I had started the newsletter just as a way to support communicating to those people. And then that turned out to be kind of the thing. So it was a thing to support another thing, and it has turned into largely the thing. So each week I send out a newsletter with different things that I have found or want to comment on or share or promote that involve both music and tabletop role playing games.
Well, it sounds like things would happen in a different order than I would have assumed. I would assume that the newsletter came first, and you're like, yeah, finally, I guess, yeah, I need to finally put out a publication, but you did the publication first.
I did. Yeah. And everyone, sort of conventional wisdom right now on promoting anything that you're doing is to start with something where you can collect email addresses, right? And do a
Yeah.
newsletter. And, but no, I kind of backed into that. Again, just looking for a way to communicate I didn't want to spend any money and I wanted to be able to reach people. And so the newsletter was what I really just stumbled on.
Yeah, so it takes, I mean, as you found out, like it takes a lot of different things to come together to make a publication. And I guess the question was like, what was your journey like going through that?
Yeah, so it started. I created a journal that just said BOC RPG on the first page. So that was what I put on there, and I had some ideas of doing something Blue Oyster Cult related with role playing games, and I just started journaling a bunch of ideas, and I've been researching some things, and eventually that turned into an adventure, and I had created the adventure for Dungeon Crawl Classics and thought and played it with a home group and said, well, I want to publish it. And that's when I was really listening again to your podcast, to watching the Scrivenery things that Trevor Stamper
Yeah.
has done, and learned about what's actually involved in creating something for publication. So when there was an affinity sale where you could get
Yes.
get one of the ones they periodically do, and I could purchase the suite for a cheap price. I did that, and I have a background in my early part of my career. I was a technical writer, so I had familiarity with early desktop publishing tools. I had used FrameMaker and PageMaker uh, back in the 90s. And so the learning curve wasn't too steep in terms of using the tools, but, um, you know, fi- figuring out what I needed to do to further play test the adventure to make it better. And then what's hit me very early on is that I didn't want it to be just in the format of a traditional zine. I wanted it to lean into the music part, and I did it in the format that was a parody of vintage music magazines that I grew up with. So things like Cream, Circus, and Hit Parader, as they can guess with the name.
Yes.
And so, in addition to the adventure, it has things like it has fake ads um, for things that parody either things you'd find like in Dragon magazine or in comic books or in guitar magazines. It has some profiles that are satires of like what Cream magazine would have. So instead of Cream profiles, there's a crit profile, and where Cream had the Boy Howdy low sort of mascot and did these very sort of deprecating to the band's profiles. We did something that was for Loot the Body, the band, and but did it with more, I think more with humor, but with more love than probably what Cream would have done. And so things like that. There's a letter to the from the publisher that is a, I don't think anyone's caught on to this, but it's a almost word for word parody of the first issue of Rolling Stone, with what Jan Wenner had published there. So I'm sure people read this thing and think, boy, whoever wrote this is crazy, because it's in the middle of the magazine, and you it sort of doesn't make sense without kind of understanding the origin. But I put there's a lot of Easter eggs and jokes for my own amusement in the publication. So it ended up taking me longer to really put it together and um, do artwork for it. My oldest kid is an artist, so I commissioned them to do the cover art and a few serious art pieces for it, and then I did the amateur art myself, and we put it together. And then I had to learn how to do a Kickstarter. And again, you have many episodes that touch on
Yeah.
that, and so learning what was involved there. So
You're ready for that long bathtub low point of the grind.
yeah, it was exactly how you and your guests have described it. So
Yeah.
it was exciting the first day,
Yeah.
and then there was a lull, and I'm not a super active social media person by nature, but trying to do at least some promotion. Uh, um, Goodman Games was really supportive of it, and any success I've had, I've probably owe a lot to them as well, because they promote any of the third party things. So I went through their program and got their
Right.
blessing, which is a very easy process to go through, and then they would include the Kickstarter in their emails to their customer base that they do. They had me on one of their Twitch shows and interviewed me for that.
Oh,
So
nice.
it was, yeah, they were just so supportive, and other creators who've done things for Dungeon Crawl Classics all kind of came out of the woodwork and offered to help me. And it was, the community around that company is just very positive, very supportive, and it really kind of got me to writing the game, because I'd been playing Dungeon Crawl Classics. The pandemic happened around the same time, and so I went to some online conventions that they were hosting during the pandemic and got to meet people, and it was just so um, welcoming across the board. I was playing games with my uh, kids that we signed up for, and so they're having folks of a variety of ages in there, and again, just so welcoming to all of us. Hearing that we had just kind of discovered the DCC game, and we're looking to play games during the pandemic. Everyone was fantastic.
So when you approach this is what's interesting is you had an idea that you wanted to do a zine, and you had a vague idea that you wanted somehow Blue Oyster Cult to somehow be part of this. And then the rest of it was just journaling until you got enough ideas and things solidified. You're like, oh, now I have enough things I can see an order in what I've got. Is that how that
I think
happened?
so, and I would say I didn't even think it was going to be a zine necessarily at first. I really didn't know what it was, what format to put it in, or even I had an initial idea that maybe it could even have been a Blue Oyster Cult themed game with a set of game rules. There, for folks who aren't too familiar with the band, part of the throughout their discography, they've done a project called the Imaginos Project, which is a very it ultimately came out as a concept album. It has things that involve alternate history, H.P. Lovecraft, conspiracy theories, alien, uh, aliens coming to the earth and changing history. So it's a very rich story. And I had been working on some other things just for our own gaming amusements that were, somewhat alternate history, historical stuff. So I
Yeah.
kind of thought I'd go there, but then as I started researching it, kind of got a different idea where with an adventure that again was kind of inspired and by their lyrics. And this is the first thing I've published as a uh, role playing game publication. And so I'm nobody, and I have no credentials and no credibility in that field. On the music side, I do have some Blue Oyster Cult credibility and have more confidence in my knowledge in that area. So I
Right.
said, well, I'll at least, it's not going to be just cowbell jokes, right? Like it'll be something that the folks who are fans of the band and also play role playing games, they will appreciate the music part to it, sort of independent of any quality of the role playing game content.
Yeah, and I think that's just it too. I mean, when you have to do something, I mean, and especially like you've mentioned, you've taken on roles that you never had before, as far as like doing layout and so forth. It's there's a certain amount of vulnerability, and sometimes that's what hangs people up, is not willing to be put something out that's not in a way that they may feel will, I don't want to say show negatively, but they're just concerned about you know things not being right and being judged in
Oh
a negative
yeah.
way.
Yeah, no, there was many moments of fear throughout where, you kind of get to that point where, okay, am I going to chicken out of doing this out of my fear of being humiliated, or am I going to put it out there? And fortunately, I kind of got through each of those crises of faith uh, through it. But, I'm still like fearful that 10-foot pole is going to review it, and it's I'm going to get torched. But I tried to, you know um, I've played role playing games for since 1979. So
Right.
I'm not new to creating content for role playing games. I've always done lots of homebrewing and playing and things like that. But it is a whole nother level to actually publish it and to create something that somebody else is going to use. I had no hubris in thinking I knew what I was doing from that standpoint.
Yeah, and I think adventures are the next level harder. It's one thing to just put out a bestiary. It's one thing to put out, various articles and NPCs, but an adventure, that's a different thing altogether. Because you can fake it as a GM, but when you're trying to give material to somebody else to run, and making sure you cover the things that they'll need, that's difficult.
Yeah, and I didn't have any experience in that. So I was again very dependent on outside resources. There are a lot of things. I read a lot of blogs. I read the Goodman Games, how to write adventures that don't suck. I
Yeah.
listened to podcasts, and so as much as I could, just try to absorb the best practices. Um, but I had to make it my own as well, right? And kind of satisfy what I was trying to do. And um, I wanted something that at least I wasn't going to be embarrassed by it. That if this is the only thing that I ever did, that I could look back on and say, I did my best and it met the goals that I had for it. And I think I did achieve that. I'm not embarrassed by it. I did achieve the goals that I had for it. I think it's good. I think the rock magazine parodies are funny for my own personal sense of humor. I don't know if other people would get the same enjoyment out of it, but for a certain type of sense of humor, I think it's on the mark.
Yeah, G.K. Chesterton, I think, believe said something to the effect of, if anything worth doing is worth doing badly. And not the idea that you should not put effort into it, but like it's okay. It's something that you just need to do.
Yeah, I think that's right. And um, I I took to heart, I didn't, I finished it before I kickstarted it. So I tried to avoid the things that would really trip me up, right? And
Yes.
cause a lot of other problems. So again, thanks to a lot of your shows, I avoided some of those.
I am glad because I still sound that warning bell to people because I still see that happening. And it's like, don't put yourself in that position.
Yeah, I really, I'm very thankful for everybody who backed it. And, everyone that backed it took a chance on buying something from somebody who had never sold anything in this industry before. And I'm just so appreciative for that. And I did not want to let anyone down who took that chance on me. And so I tried very much to underpromise on
Yeah.
the descriptions of it, to have it done in the first place, and other than printing it, and to I hope I over delivered on what their expectations were.
So have you heard back from people from the books that made it into the wild? Have you encountered people?
Yeah, I have, and people have been exclusively positive about it. I don't know how much, the um, folks who haven't reached out to me maybe those are the ones that didn't like it. So I don't. I realize that
Yeah,
those who
yeah.
took the time to say something are probably feeling positive about it, and I really appreciate again the feedback that I've had through them because I started the newsletter during the Kickstarter, and at this point there's almost 60 issues of that. That has connected me with people. Initially it was probably just people who signed up for the Kickstarter that subscribed, and then it's kind of slowly but surely it's grown, and I've received just a lot of, again, kind of the positivity in the community has really touched me, frankly. Like everyone's been very positive about the newsletter, um, and about the zine, and very encouraging, and have said nice things. I started a corresponding or a companion podcast for the newsletter, the Appendix LP podcast, and people who I've invited have said yes, which blew my mind to be on there. And it seems like there was people were excited to talk about music and gaming. And again, I'm just so touched by how warm and welcoming everyone has been in this community.
Yeah, it is interesting because, I similar, it's like, we think of big names or different things, but this it is small enough and people that are involved, they're passionate about what they do. So it's right. It is kind of amazing. People willing to give up their time, but it makes you realize everybody's at the heart, we're all fans.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I'm pleased to be part of it. It's been an improvement to my life over the last year. I think I can say I've made friends through doing this project. I've increased my the amount of friends that I have that I talk games and music to, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I don't know if you found the same thing, but I think as in general, as we get older, it's easier to become more of a recluse. And you can kind of see this trajectory, like, I don't like where this is headed. It's like,
Yeah, and it's not healthy, right? So
yeah,
there's a lot of health benefits to not being full on recluse. And when you get to the certain stages of your life, the um, institutional things that you're surrounded by that are likely to provide friendships can go away. So
right.
my children now are all grown, so I'm not doing things where I'm meeting other parents through their activities. When you graduate from stop going to school at whatever point that happens, you're not meeting as many friends. And my regular gaming group, I've got two of the people that I play with, we've been playing since middle school,
Oh, that's
and
great.
we play online. One's in Switzerland, one's in California, and it's a way that we've stayed
Right.
It gives us a reason. It's so easy in the busyness of life and work to go long periods of time without connecting with the people that are important to you in your life. And having that regular game session ensures that we don't go too long without connecting. And we start each one where we talk about what happened during the week. We always talk about music, anything we've listened to that we want to share, any concerts we've gone to, or new albums we bought, and then we play games.
Yeah, and I also think too, I found that people that I, at least with other creators or creative types, that there's also generally other areas of intersections that we have things in common, where it's like a random person at, whatever it may be, there's less likely that's going to happen.
Yeah, why do you think that is? Because I've observed the same thing, but I don't know why.
We're just weird. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. It's just like a lot of places I just don't fit in, and I don't know why. I guess sports don't interest me. I don't know what it is. But then I find other people are like-minded. It's like we can talk on a number of subjects and for long periods of time. I think what could be, I think we also maybe, well, another thing I maybe now I'm thinking about, I think I like Trevor Stamper because he's probably a very interesting person. But he's got other pursuits that he's passionate about that are outside of maybe the normal, like same thing with you in music. And so I, I think people who are able to, have a discourse about things that they're interested in is uh, is I think more engaging for people like us than to, I don't know. Once you talk about the weather and talk about work, what's left? It's like
Right, right. It does seem like it's sort of the amount of maybe passion and excitement to talk about the hobbies that are maybe the part that's in common, because I have some of the people that I game with or talk with, we all have the gaming in common, and there's other things that often are in common, like the music, and that was certainly something that I had noticed. But some do like sports, and some do like,
yeah,
some are really into movies, and some aren't into movies as much, and some play video games, and some don't play video games as much. But it seems like for all of them, there's a level of interest in kind of going deep into those interests and sharing them and talking about them. So I don't know if it's maybe that's sort of the passion about it. Being into, I probably got this more from music than from games, but um, because I listen to a wide genres of music, I've found that I can talk to lots of different people about music. Sort of, they don't have to be in my, they don't have to be my age. They don't have to be, they don't have to like games. They don't have to have the same other interests, but it improves my own confidence. So as a introverted person, being able to have a conversation catalyst around music, and I've been in my professional career and things where I need to do a lot of um, I had to do a lot of selling. I've had to do a lot of marketing. I've had to do a lot of meeting of strangers and and pitching things to them. And I found that talking about music was a way to have a conversation that I was comfortable with, and we find some area. I feel like for everybody, I can find some
right. There's
music
a
thing that you're
touchstone that
passionate about.
almost everybody likes music to at least a certain degree. And everybody knows at least a handful of popular artists that you can, even if you don't love, you can also talk about.
That's right. That's right. And when I for part of my career, I was doing training courses, and you do icebreakers for those training courses. And a great icebreaker that I found was the first band or musician that you saw live. What was your first concert? And through answering that question, you almost always got a story, right? Like there, you'd learn something more about the person, right? Like how old were they? Who did they
Right.
go with? Where was it? And if you're meeting people who've grown up all over, in places all over the world, you'd learn all kinds of different things. Um, and then you'd hear about an artist, and it might be an artist that you knew, might be an artist you liked, might be an artist you never heard of, might have been an artist you don't care for, but you'd hear about that first experience. And I found that people, that's one that people would really be willing to open up about.
Yeah, I didn't think about that way, but you're right. And I think um you're right. And those concerts are a first concert, even though I don't necessarily, I'm trying to think about my first concert, but it is generally for most people probably, especially if they paid money to go to it and they're all hyped and energetic, or they're just there on a date and it just was like, no, this was not cool. But
Right.
but I ended up getting married to this woman later on, so it was worth it, or whatever it may be. You're right. It does. I think it is in a sense I won't say a milestone or maybe it's a touchstone that many people have. It's
Yeah.
beyond just the mundane, whatever.
Yeah. And I've even found, some people get embarrassed by that because I think they feel like their tastes are going to be judged, or they've changed their tastes since then. So it creates a little bit of vulnerability, but not and probably too strong of vulnerability. So it's like a first way you can open up a little bit, and then you're kind of you're seeing how the person reacts, and can you continue to be more vulnerable after that. And I found, quite a few times it'll be a little bit sheepish as they're talking about that first concert, because it might be something that they feel, I don't know, isn't cool, or that someone else wouldn't like.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I would imagine it's no different than, maybe we're less embarrassed, but like movies that we thought were absolutely phenomenal when we were kids, and then we watch them as adults, and you're like, I just wish I had never watched it again and left it as
Right.
perfect in my memory, but now I have seen it and it has just diminished incredibly.
Yeah. And that can be tough too, right? Like when you've, especially like sharing something with the next generation. So for my kids, right, I'll be yapping away about some movie that I thought was, it was formative to me and was great. And
Yes.
then we'll go watch it, and they're on, Dad, what are you talking about? And
Yeah.
I'm having the same experience.
I
Sorry,
did
I
with
don't know
my
what I
son,
was thinking.
was said with Halloween, as he's want to watch 80s horror, like, oh, Halloween would be the one to watch. And then he's watching in the other room, and I came by occasionally with the music. I'm like, this is bad. The music doesn't fit. This is just not good.
But in your memory,
Yeah,
it was better.
but going back to shame, like I remember my first albums was like Captain Tennille, Muskrat Love, and Bay City Rollers, and at one time I'd have been embarrassed by it, but it's like no, it's fine.
Yeah, yeah. I have no guilty pleasures whatsoever. I do not feel bad about anything that I like. So
Have you been that way all the time, or have you just reached an age where you're like, who cares?
I think, I mean, I had to have been more sensitive to it, right? Like in like high school, but I always liked a really wide variety. My dad, he was a singer in the early '60s. He had a band called the Chessmen that was in
Oh yeah.
the Seattle area. Not there's multiple Chessmen.
Oh,
So this is early '60s in Seattle.
okay.
They cut 145. They had TV appearances, and they were a basically a doo-wop group. And he would he had that band, and then once he got recalled back into the army and various things, and he never went back and did had a band again. But we would always drive around in the car on Saturday nights, and the way we called it was listen to the oldies. And it would be listening to the music that he had listened to, so largely 50s um, music. So things like doo-wop, early R&B, things like that. And then AM radio. was sort of what we would listen to
Right.
the rest of the time. And so all that 70s AM radio, which was pretty diverse then anyways, right? There, you got significant amounts. I mean, you had disco and country and pop and rock all kind of on. Even had like some jazzy instrumentals that would
Yeah.
that would be hits. And so, I think I was pretty open minded. In 1979, I got turned on to, I would say, contemporary rock music in a serious way. Like I got really into it. I had a friend whose older brothers, um, were going to concerts, and we heard about all those things. And I started to get serious about it. That was the same year I started playing Dungeons and Dragons, and so both of those things kind of imprinted on me that year and uh, go hand in hand. But throughout high school, I would listen to metal, listen to punk, listen to blues, listen to you know uh 60s music, 70s music, 80s music, and even then found it was a way to be a geeky kid, but that I could talk to sort of all the other people in other cliques within the school. You'd find there'd be someone who you normally wouldn't be your someone you'd be hanging out with, and then they've found out that oh, you really know, oh, Iron Maiden or whatever the,
Yeah.
the band is, and you have this deep conversation, and now you've kind of crossed your clicks.
Yeah. My school is very, very small, and that really was never quite a thing. I think there's probably people who like the real pop stuff. There's some people who like country, and there's people who liked the rock. And
Hmm.
then there wasn't much crossover. There really isn't any much nuance to it. I think over time I just got kind of bored with just hearing the same songs over and over again. So I just started diversifying.
So on your own.
Yeah. Well, yeah, just like and I find out now today, like people can listen to the same 80s hits. This is like, I don't know, this is 30 years is like I can't imagine every day turning on and hearing the same music that I was listening to in high school every single day for the rest of my life. It just boggles my mind. But some people find enjoyment in it, and it's fine. I don't, but for me, it's like this guy doing something different.
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly common, right, for people to not change their tastes in music from what they listen to at ages where it's pretty impressionable. So that, your early teenage years often is the music that people like the best. And it's kind of a cliche, right? People will sort of talk about, music these days and things like that. And although the music industry has changed tremendously over the years, the amount of quality music, there's still tons of great new music out
Yes.
there.
People say blah 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 about music being no good these days, or there's no, and I'm like, you have to be extremely lazy.
That's right.
You have to be extremely lazy to not search out and find new music in whatever style it is that you like.
Yeah, the means of production have changed, right? Because the barrier to entry has gone down, there's actually more of every genre. I mean,
Oh yeah.
that in whatever niche that you want to find, and bands can produce high quality recordings at a lower cost and can make their own videos. So spending any time on YouTube or Bandcamp or anything, I mean, you can find so much great stuff.
I know. I just find it perplexing. But I think many people would rather complain than actually put the effort in.
Yeah, and it probably tied to just I mean, there's a little bit of that in all parts of life, right? Like, so as the world changes, it's hard to, as you get older, to navigate all that change, and you get to choose your
Yes.
attitude about that, and you can
These
choose.
kids are ruining my D&D.
That's right. Well, there's a lot of parallels, right, between um, that sort of approach to both gaming and music.
Yeah, and I just find it perplexing. Like take Taylor Swift. I've listened to a couple albums and she's fine, but I'd never understood the amount of like anger towards her for being successful. It's like,
Very-
like
It's very strange.
it is very strange. It's like, people's enjoyment of her doesn't diminish my love of anything that I listen to. I don't understand.
In the same way that their love for games that you don't play doesn't
Yeah,
diminish the
exactly.
your love of the games that you do play.
Yeah, and I found that not a plug for YouTube. They should give me money, but I switched over. I ended up getting YouTube Premium for because they had a discount and I was for 3 months and I just didn't like ads for my YouTube videos. Do you use YouTube Premium?
I don't. So Brendan LaSalle from Goodman Games
Yeah.
was on the podcast, and he has recommended it to me.
Ooh,
So I've been thinking about it. I do use Spotify. I have a lot of problems with Spotify, the company, right now.
but at
So
least Google's ethical.
well, it's really hard, right? Like, and
Yeah.
Bandcamp, which I use a lot and really love, and now they've been sold twice in the last couple of years, and so it's very. I feel like you're making compromises with any of my technology choices.
That is true. That's what it comes down to. Right. So if you have no ethical qualms with Google's being unethical, they've got this thing where you can choose artists that you've listened to, pick any number of them, and you can choose either standard or discovery, and you can choose the wideness of what it casts.
Mm,
So you could pick 20 artists to one artist, hit whatever variety and that you want and how far it goes out. And it'll take you on a journey that I had Apple Music, it won't do. It's strange. Like um um who is it? Travis, I forget the country artist, Travis, Randy Travis, that's who it was.
okay, I was gonna guess
Yeah,
Travis
all of a
Tritt.
sudden I'm listening to Randy Travis. Like, how did I get here? And then I start thinking back all the songs, like, oh, I see how Google took me here. And it was kind of interesting. I'm like, I guess I'm okay with it. I hated it back in the day. But now as a listener, it's like, yeah, it's okay. I don't know why I was so angry about it. I guess it was country, but it's just kind of interesting because it can take you on a journey that you're not expecting, in a way that seems kind of organic.
Yeah, that's great. And again, you're finding stuff you wouldn't have known about before. My to check out list is always so big, and since I've started the newsletter, I get people recommending me things even at a bigger rate. And I subscribe to a lot of music newsletters, and then I'm just constantly searching. I have a lot of friends who are sort of big music geeks, and so my list of bands to check out is never ending, and that's exciting, right? Like I'm so glad you never know when you're gonna get turned on to something that's your next favorite thing.
Yes. Yeah. Like gangsta grass. Who knew I needed gangsta grass?
I didn't. Is that your thing now?
Well, there's a group called Gangsta Grass. They took rap and mixed it with bluegrass. And you're thinking those don't go together. And you listen to it, it's like, this was meant to be. This is the
Oh,
way.
that's excellent. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, so you have really good bluegrass uh, vocalist and instrumentalists, and then you have two guys doing the rap part. And it's like, and then you start thinking about it, it's like, well, they are both folk music.
That's right.
And it's just like, you think you're hearing, it's like, this doesn't make sense. And then you listen to it, you're like, this makes complete sense.
For across things like that, there's almost always way more things in common than there are differences, right? Like there's um
Yeah.
between different genres of music, but people focus on the differences.
Yes.
But there's way more things that they have in common.
So like I never really was, there's a bunch of bands in the 90s I didn't really listen to, but I was listening to there's a group that does covers, but they do them in like 40s or 50s style, postmodern jukebox. And I think it's I can't remember, give it up. No, give it. It's a Red Hot Chili song, Chili Pepper song. And so I listened to it, and I listened to the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I'm listening to it. And it's like, wow, this almost sounds like a there's a rap influence with this.
Oh, interesting.
There's something about the cadence. I don't know what it is, but I just thought it's funny how some people, and I was never a big rap fan, but it does have an influence in ways that people don't realize. And it's like, you're right. Then all this music, there's an interrelationship. And when people start doing weird stuff with it, you realize there really isn't, technically that much difference, I guess, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and for like folk music and rap music, right? That they have in common is that the lyrics matter,
Yeah.
right? That's it's a important part of the style of music, and even just that um, is interesting, and sort of culturally the importance of the music.
Well, it's usually, I think it's about people in that are a lot of times in situations like the lower social strata singing about, the situations that they're in,
That's right.
so it's just
Yeah,
like,
and
so,
and blues is like that, right? And
oh, right,
so
right.
many things came from out of blues.
But I think it's interesting how like some people have derision towards certain things, but in the end, it's like, but it's probably influencing the music that they're listening to now, and they just don't realize it.
Yeah, it's all people trying to communicate the human experience and make their lives
Yes.
better through music, right?
And I think with a lot of things, my son and I had a discussion about art, and he's got a discussion is there for the class was is there objectively good art and bad art? And I was like, well, then you really have to ask the question, is there such a thing as art? And
Mm.
it's like the thing with music, it's like it really becomes a very subjective thing, I think, but sometimes it's the test of time is a lot of ways of measure. And I think sometimes with us, myself, there's things I don't like, but after like hearing it like 7 or 8 times, I'm like, wait a minute. It's like, this is pretty good, really.
Yeah, some things take exposure, right? You have to you're especially if it's something that's different than what you've heard before. Your brain doesn't have the buckets, the categories to put it in, so it
Yeah.
can't fully process um, what it's listening to. There's certain styles of music that took me a while. So something like death metal, which has something with extreme vocal
Yeah.
styles. That was an acquired taste. Right? When I first heard it, um, I couldn't process it because I was only focused on the harshness of that vocals, and people saying the Cookie Monster vocal style and things like that, and I didn't get it. I didn't get it, right. But then sometimes you need sort of the gateway drug bands that have
Right.
something else about it that um, make it palatable to you, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, I'm now, kind of goes through the, now it no longer bothers me, and that now I'm enjoying it, and then eventually you're appreciating nuances and differences in the style where it all sounded the same to you when you were first exposed to it.
Yeah. And one of the things I exposed my son to was Yoko Ono doing a performance. And I'm like, is that art or is it not art? I don't know. Is this music or is it not music? I don't know. Is it good or is it bad? I don't know. I know I don't like it,
Right.
but
But
but there may be things about it I don't understand.
yeah, yeah. And I think it's hard to I'm not that into sort of the academics of it, right? It's enough that um it has an effect on people, and I don't necessarily need to know the words or the theory behind the effects that it has. And I may not understand, and it may have an effect on me that's different than it has on other people. So who am I sort of to judge? So again, I'm very,
Right.
I like, I'm a music fanatic. I'm not a music critic. So the thing when I write about music, or I'm a frequent panelist on the Contrarians YouTube show, and we talk about music all the time. And I'm looking to talk about the things that excite me. I'm not looking
Yes.
to rain on someone else's parade and talk about what I, and it's just, I'm just not in, I don't want to spend energy talking about things that I personally don't care for.
No, no, I agree. It's, I agree. But I will tell you what I do enjoy, and I find myself stuck in these YouTube scrolls is people that do different kinds of analysis. So one guy would do one on instruments. There's another one I was listening to people who do the who are like vocal coaches, and they'll do analyze. So I could not really care a lot about a song or whatever, but I get fascinated when even though I don't fully understand all that they're saying, but it's they start breaking things down. It's like, you start realizing it's just not somebody just getting up and just singing. Like there's a lot of thought.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, so I'm like a big fan of like Rick Beato's YouTube channel where he's what makes this song great, and
Yeah.
these deep dive interviews in terms of how people, you get that's sort of the positive role of a critic, which is that they can provide additional context and expertise that they can communicate to you in such a way that you gain more appreciation to how the artist went about doing it, or why they made certain choices. So there is a lot of positivity around the role of a critic when they're providing um, that sort of contextual additional information that can increase your understanding or appreciation of the art, but just hating on something I'm not interested in.
No, no. And it is like you say, there's just, as we get older, we only have so much more, time left on this earth. Why I guess some people get joy out of being angry. And maybe that's something I should just recognize.
Yeah, that's sad to me, but it's but it's true. So yeah, life's way too short. So to me, it's about you know, play is an important word for me, right? So play the games you love, play the music you love, and do both with the people you love, and that sort of adds a lot to my life.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast. They were talking about the Rebel Moon, the TV, we'll call it movie that was on Netflix, which I did not care for. But as they were talking about it, they were looking at it from a role-playing perspective. And then they came up with this theory that this was an actual game taking place and we're watching it happen. And they explained all the goofiness in a way, well, because at the table this happened, and because of the table this happened, and this person was gone for this session. That's why they're not here. And it's like,
Interesting.
and I'm like, and they were able to like do this twist, and they took something I really did not really care for, and they made it like a very fun thing. And so kudos to people who can also do those types of things as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. And when and I like sort of theories about things that mash things up. Like even if that's not true, whatever true means, but
Right.
if that was not sort of the intent of the creator, um, they just created their own art, right? By making those connections and
Right.
describing it and putting it a different frame to watch it through. They made their own art for it, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it encouraged me to watch it again, but it is kind of fun where it kind of made me almost want to watch it again. But anyway, yeah, I agree. There's enough. So you say you're looking for bands, and you have and also you look at intersection of music and game. So what's the lens that you're looking for when you write your newsletter?
So I would say there's multiple lenses. I'm personally more interested in the way that the music that people listen to, how that inspires their gaming. There's a whole thing right around where you've got music that you're playing during the games,
Right.
and so like dungeon synth music, or just anything that you're going to play the song that the bard's playing at the bar or something like that, or mood music for those different things. That can be fun to do, but I'm a little less interested in that part to it. So I tend to focus more on the music that inspires whatever about the games that people play. So I have this concept of appendix LP. So where, of course, Gary
Yeah,
Gygax
yeah.
had his appendix N of the sources of literature that inspired him and Dungeons and Dragons. I think of an individual's appendix LP is the list of music that either inspires or enhances your own gaming. It can be as simple as just gets you in the mood to play, or it could be that it actually, there's something about that song or that lyric or that video that sparked your imagination, that, it can be, like you're making a character and you're kind of thinking, well, it's kind of like David Bowie, right? So you just kind
Yeah.
of have that in your mind. Or it could be that this album cover, because that's something that games and music have in common a lot, is the artwork is very important to the fans of those genres and can really enhance the enjoyment of both music and games. And for a lot of the fantasy artists who did artwork for the novels that inspired games and that have then done artwork for the games themselves, also do album covers. So I do spend quite a bit of time in the newsletter kind of covering some of those artists that have appeared in both. um and then just I love finding things where certain musicians also like to play games. And so there's been, I think more recently, there's more contemporary artists who will talk about how they do play role playing games, and that they'll talk about the ways in which one has enhanced the other. So, bands like the Mountain Goats, John Darnielle, will talk about sort of the way in which um, music has enhanced his gaming and gaming has influenced his music, right? So there's truly an artistic intersection there. I love that kind of stuff. So I'm always scouring to find um, more artists musical artists who play games, and where they are talking about that intersection.
Yeah, I didn't really think much about musicians playing. I know there's a lot of to be said about, movie and TV celebrities, but and I don't know, and maybe just I haven't, I don't read a lot of the interviews or magazines and such, but I don't know that much of, other than like say the Mountain Goats I've heard of. But I don't know many are bandied about like, you know, like some of the other movie stars and such.
Yeah, I mean, you got to search for it. So it is definitely less. Probably Tom Morello is probably the most well-known person who speaks quite a bit about how he played Dungeons and Dragons as a kid, plays Dungeons and Dragons now with one of the more well-known Hollywood groups, right? So he plays with Joe Manganiello
Yeah.
and the Big Show, the wrestler, and the creators of Game of Thrones, and that whole group. And he's um, speaks more frequently about the gaming side of things for someone who's a pretty well-known musician.
So I was listening to, or I was reading, a, there's an essayist named D.B. White who wrote Charlotte's Web and various other things, but he wrote during his life, he used to write for, I believe it was I think it was the New Yorker. And he started up a small farm, and it was during World War II. And then they listed all the things, like people had to list their skills, and farmer was on there, but writer wasn't. And he says it's really kind of ironic because here I am on a farm, but I don't have like the skills to be a farmer. And he goes, there's no area for writer, but then he says, but nobody's just a writer. You only can write from your experiences. And that I can't remember, but he might have even said, that maybe there is no writer, like that's a profession. It just, you have to live life. And I think probably the same thing with the role-playing games and the music. It's like you can't just create music, just doesn't come about. It comes about through experiences and thinking and feelings and interactions. It just doesn't occur in a vacuum. So I could see where that could do that.
Yeah, and that's interesting, and that makes sense to me, that quote. And some forms of music is a younger person's form of music, right? Like, and has maybe more passion than experience in forming.
Yeah, I used to be
Um,
upset the albums. I get like the Styx albums. Why are there these slow songs on here? Why would they put any slow songs on these albums? That was just a waste of space. Obviously, they were just filling it with stuff they just didn't know what else to do with. So yes.
so now when you go back, so if you were to listen now, do you have a more mature appreciation, or does Styx
Well,
slow songs still
well,
not do
I
it for you?
realize that you have to have the slow to enjoy the fast. I do enjoy slower songs now, but it's like with movies. You can't keep things ratcheted up to 10.
Right.
That's why Avengers Endgame works, is because not only do they have the pathos, but they also had the levity, and they were able to mix the humor and the really deep emotional stuff in a way. So it was an overall more effective movie. Removing the humor would have not made it a great. It would have been a not good movie.
Right. And so from the sounds like the music
Yeah,
analog to that, right, is just having that the pacing, right, and the dynamics that come from having rockers and slow songs.
yeah, and so
Yeah.
that's why I will when I do my musical mix, I will throw in some maybe Glenn Miller gets thrown in there. It's just like
Right.
it's okay. It doesn't have to all fit, but sometimes you just need to chill out a little bit with a clarinet. It's
Yeah,
okay.
that's right.
You don't want to hear a clarinet all day long, but you know what? It's got its time and its place in the whole menu of options that you're going through.
That's right. And time and place for everything, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned sticks, and it makes me rethink one of the answers I gave earlier, which is that have I always been that way, where I was open minded? And I would say, and now I'm flashing back, and I'd say, no, I would definitely wasn't, because I can remember where there were bands that were not cool to like, and that I would participate in some of that mocking
Yeah.
that you would do. And so, at a time where Styx was for some of the people who are into the heavier type of music, I definitely remember writing Styx stinks with a Y for the STYNX on the our grocery bag covered textbooks.
Well, I hope that was only in reference to Mr.
Mr.
Roboto.
Roboto. It was probably the Mr. Roboto time,
Okay,
but
I'm okay with
I
that.
like that song. I, I saw um, I never saw Styx the band live, but I did see Dennis DeYoung live, and I did see Tommy Shaw um,
They were just
live, and they're
both
both
brilliant
great.
people, but just they didn't get along, and they had different visions. And it's unfortunate. Dennis DeYoung is a genius, and Mr. Roboto obviously stuck in everybody's head. I don't mind it. It's just, but he also knew you can't stay still.
Right. They had some true that's some true progressive rock mentality to it, right? And meaning progressing, right? Like, so not wanting to stay still. And some careers have benefited by not being progressive. So where classic rock is still, as a touring entity,
Right.
bands do better by only
Nostalgia.
playing the nostalgic, yeah, is regressive. But that probably, I would think, sort of tears a little bit at the artist's desires to progress.
Well, so Billy Joel, I really am more a fan of 70s Billy Joel. I was listening to a podcast where they were covering him, and what I didn't realize was how he continually reinvented himself in a way that stayed just above the curve. And the timing and what his choices were and what he was doing. And I realized after doing that and also listening to how, like, we wonder why a band can't stay the same. That sound, whatever that is only like lasting for 2 years and it moves on. Even
Mm.
the grunge band, the grungy, lasted for like 2 years and they switched to pop. I mean,
Hmm.
it is a moving target if you want to stay, you know, successful to, whatever the current, appetites are.
Yeah, and you need your fan base to move with you, and if
Yeah,
you're moving in
yes.
such a way that you may move faster than your fan base, right?
Yes.
So even though the contemporary style then might be what you're staying current, but do your fans, right? Like there's a, if Billy Joel, and I know he went through a period like up until very, very, very recently where he said wasn't going to write any more new
Yeah.
songs, and if he had continued to produce, maybe he was writing songs, he's just not putting them out. But if he were to continue to progress as a musician, I'm sure there's a large part of his fan base that still just wants to go see him play Piano Man in
Yeah,
concert,
exactly.
not move with him, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think the thing is, well, I may think that New York State of Mind is the highest form of Billy Joel that can ever exist, except for maybe a couple other songs. The fact of the matter is he's a brilliant man who did some amazing things to keep going where he was going and wasn't satisfied with just playing the piano. And they said that actually the piano part playing was only a very short amount of time. He started introducing synthesizers and all sorts of other stuff. The piano may have always been some piano, but that went away a long time ago. But we still
Mm.
always associate him with the piano man, even though that was only like a few years of his history.
Right, right. And for a while he kept the same band, right? Even against some record company pressure to change folks. So I know he had, I think, ultimately a rough falling out with those folks and like Liberty DeVito and people like that. But um, I think if for a while he was able to like really have a band, right? It wasn't just him and the
Yeah.
piano; it was a band.
Well, you talk about changing. It's kind of interesting because I was thinking of the biggest one was fans not progressing with the artist would be uh, Bob Dylan going electric.
Right. Oh gosh, yeah, yeah. So Newport, right? And you can hear the recording, right, and hear the the negative reaction.
Yeah. But I'm thinking, that's the same as D&D fifth edition or whatever edition. It's Bob Dylan plugging the electric guitar. You betrayed us, Bob.
Yeah. So when did D&D plug in?
Yeah.
Which version
Yeah.
did D&D plug in? That's hilarious. And it's so like it's so hard because I did not live through that, right? I wasn't
Right.
I I can't understand how that music was viewed as radical to his original fan base because I'm only coming at it from the future, right? Like what changed. But at the time, I guess it was some sort of
Yes.
betrayal of the folk music principles to.
Yeah, they're selling it to the man, I guess. I don't know. You're right. It is strange because really even electric guitar at that time hadn't necessarily been around that long as far as I guess it's been around for quite a while, but it is strange why I don't know. It is odd, but
And just around the corner, right? I get, then rock became the music of the revolution, not folk music.
yes.
So he was ahead of his time in terms of understanding. I don't know if that's why, but like in the social change music, then became what was after that folk generation was really rock music, right? That 60s music that came later.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it could just be as simple as, an artist just saying, "Yeah, I've already done this other stuff. I just want to try this for a while." Or it could be it's like, you know what? This is where the money is. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. And even, you even if it was doing it, I guess for the money, and it could still be, that doesn't invalidate it, right?
No,
If, I guess if you're only doing it for the money, maybe it does, but um, I'm not sure anybody's hearts are 100% pure.
no, no. And I think the two, it's really, you measure what it is that's being, put out, not necessarily the intent, as far as what's quality and what's not, what endures and what doesn't. And he still has a legacy. So
Oh yeah, and I mean, he is someone that generations do rediscover, right? So um, he uh, he has a better chance than most of still being listened to uh, for a
yes.
while after he's gone, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, and I think, yeah, and I do find it interesting that for somebody that, and I've enjoyed Bob Dylan for a long time, but like for having just this kind of nasally annoying voice, it's amazing. Like it still just carries. I don't know what it is about that that still resonates.
Yeah, and so many books have been written about him, right? He's influenced so many musicians that came after him. Other musicians thinks he's really important. Not too many, like he's viewed as a true poet,
Yeah,
right? So and you have that within every sort of generation, but there's not that many, right? Like so you go, you've got Dylan and then maybe like, Leonard Cohen, and then, you know, I guess this all depends on your taste, right? So I'm not,
right.
but like Patti Smith and Lou Reed or something like that. And then it seems like just within each decade, there's sort of a few that where there's a broad acceptance of their lyrics as being poetic and important.
Yeah, so I did. I was Patti Smith's album, was it Horse? Wasn't Horses? What was the name of it? Uh,
Horse is one of them.
yeah.
Horses,
So I listened
Easter.
to it. I really didn't care for it. But she was pretty sharp and it was pretty good. I am reading my I always call her my daughter-in-law. She's not married yet to into the family, but she gave me a Patti Smith book, and she is really good writing. She is really, really good. And she starts out with the quote of that she had in a dream that it's hard to write about nothing. And so she's writing about nothing, and it's just an interesting book, but it's, you know, but you talk about poet. I mean, the person's writing these stories, they don't necessarily have a connection, but they do create a feeling. They don't necessarily have an ending,
Mm.
but it is an interesting trajectory you're being taken on. And it's like, so even though I may not care for her music, it goes back to, yeah, you're right. These people are poets and they are very crafted, very good at their craft.
Hmm.
Even if I think Bob Dylan's nasally, I can say, yeah, he's a good poet, I guess.
Yeah, yes. No doubt about it. And I, would it be him without his voice, right? Like it,
Right.
um, he's, there's something to be said for, um, it's a different skill. Like, so someone who is a poet and is then delivering their own songs, that's a certain effect, right? And that's different that's a different form of art than a singer who's an interpreter of somebody else's words, right? Like there's that's a different, it's a, I don't know if skill's the right word, but it requires a different approach to the art than that. And um,
Well, I guess it depends on, are they performing it or are they like trying to find a connection and trying to maybe personify
mm,
their their feelings for that song through that.
yeah, I don't know. And some singers are more like actors, right? Like
Well,
they're
like
putting
Weird
on
Al,
the
let's take Weird Al as one extreme. He's not trying to, any song he's doing, he's not really trying to say, the song's moved me. I therefore want
right.
to create my own version of this a cover. It's like, no, I will. He's never going to go there, which is a legitimate thing. But you might find out somebody else that says, you know what, like the I forget who wrote the song Angel from Montgomery. Who's the guy who wrote that? John. I mean, many women have written this, the play Angel from Montgomery.
Okay, don't
And
know.
it's from the it says Susan Tedeschi. I can never pronounce
Oh
her name.
yeah.
Well, anyway, it's about a woman and going through this issue with in life and with her husband. It's like a man was able to write this thing that men don't experience, but in a way that connected with women. And
Hmm.
then women can sometimes play that in their own experience. It's kind of interesting how those experiences and how people sing, and some people it comes out very haunting, where others less so. And it's, that reinterpreting, I guess, personally, how that connects with them.
Right, right. Interesting. There's so many different audio lenses, right? You can listen to these things for and appreciate on different levels, right? So, I really like Ray Davis from the Kinks, and a lot of his stories are character driven, or his songs are character driven, right? Like he's
Right.
um, whereas there's other ones, musicians, where you really feel like everything's personal. All right, there's not a detached artist who's making an observation. It's just um, pouring the pouring the blood on the page, right?
Right.
It's just
But
right
but
from.
but they could just be pouring that stuff out, not really be anything tied other than this is just a fantasy I've created in my head. But it feels real.
It feels real. Yeah, that's a good point, right? Like we don't know.
Yeah. Because I think sometimes people, I know some artists have just been accused of things. They're like, no, I don't, this is not me. This is me creating a character, and I'm writing from the vantage point of a character.
Right.
That I can't remember who it was said that, but you're right. But it does, but I think when it feels authentic, that's when it kind of pierces through and becomes, I guess better art than that's what good art is. I think is able to, for me, a perfect song is it especially ones that have a story that will, when you listen to it, conveys that same feeling of the message they're trying to convey.
Hmm. What would be an example of that
Well,
that you
I
have?
think the I don't know. For some reason, Brandy is one that carries me away. I mean, I can imagine the woman, the diner. I can imagine the sea. I mean, I can imagine the man who's got this passion and he's willing to just give it up. Like, I don't care how much I like you. I cannot give this up. And it just, it's weird. I don't necessarily associate myself with that person, but I can feel that.
So, Looking Glass, Brandy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. So, I think that is one of the most perfectly written pop songs. There is very few lyrics to it, and it tells the whole story,
yeah.
right? Like it's so well done. That is a all time favorite song for me. And it is just so the lyrics are so perfectly crafted.
Well, and it does it to me every time I hear it.
Yeah.
Because I can say, well, the first time I heard it, it's like, no, every single time I'm transported.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Like,
But how does he do it? Or how do they do it? I don't know. Like that's what's magic.
and I have to say that one does transcend generations. So my kids are fans of that song. We perform it. We play that song. And it's fun for them. It's fun for me.
Yeah, I think is it Greg Allman? Is it bound? Was it Whipping Pole?
Whipping Post,
This post,
Allman
yeah, that's
Brothers.
another one
Yeah.
that just like it's just like it does feel like a person is just going through the struggle. It's
Yeah.
like
That
even
that's a
screaming. It's a point where it's just like, wow, this is very. It feels very real.
and they do in my opinion, right? Like they do a great job of letting the music support that, right? Because you have that big jam that comes in, and then it comes back to that sometimes I feel, which
Yeah.
Greg Allman sings with so much pain and passion, and it stops, and right, it just all serves the whole purpose of what the song's communicating.
And I also don't know why Billie Jean by Michael Jackson is another one. I don't know what it is, but I always love that song. Even when I tried to deny it and say I don't like Michael Jackson, I really love that song.
Well, again, it's another perfect. It's a perfect pop song, and it tells us right. It
Yeah.
not a lot of lyrics, but you get the whole sort of story and song.
Yeah, so that's to me is things that are perfect. Or I may like some songs more, but those for whatever reason I consider like they really have whatever that magic is.
Yeah,
Uh,
I love it. Those are all excellent choices.
oh, thank you. How about yourself? What would be your top choices for transporting into the feeling of a song?
Well, in some ways, right, it's a little bit hard to not. There are songs that have so much nostalgia that it is hard to separate what I'm thinking of, like my own reactions, how much are created just from my own life because of that
Yeah.
song versus what's actually in the song itself. So from a song that just moves me so much and is so I think is a perfect song would be Ooh Child by the was it the Five Stair Steps? Um so around the same time period as Brandy, and it's just so perfectly sung, so perfectly played. And I picture I don't know if you ever saw the movie Over the Edge.
No.
I think it's 1979. It's about juvenile delinquency in
No, definitely not.
suburbs of California. I think it's Matt Dillon's first movie. Um, and I'm not. I don't. Movies go right through me. I don't really remember them that well the way I remember music. But that one, in there's an ending scene, and the kids are getting some of the kids are getting taken away to juvenile detention of some sort, and they're in a bus, and they're looking back at their friends, and that song's being played, and so I can't separate out that sort of image.
No, that is interesting. So the impression is the song plus there's a narrative going on outside of that song, but those two combined in a way that just click.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So um, that one really does it for me. Um, Suzanne by Leonard Cohen, this the lyrics to it just moved me so much. And but again, I've been listening to that song, since I first heard it in probably 1978. It's been a constant in my life, so it's hard to again separate out my
So
own
I've come to
experiences.
more Leonard Cohen probably more later. I don't know that I'm a big fan of his, but to actually have been a to have enjoyed him at that point in your life, that's pretty astounding.
Yeah, so my mom was a librarian at a public library, and the library where she worked had some very young hip librarians. And so the albums that they had that you could check out were really eclectic. And so in the late 70s, I was exposed to a lot of like just really cool stuff, just flipping through the records and borrowing the headphones at the library and listening to them or bringing them home. So I did get turned on to some things that normally people my age wouldn't have maybe gotten a chance to hear. But that's from his first album, so that's 1967 that it
Right.
came
But I
out.
mean,
So
but I'm saying even at your age to be, because I mean, that's a different style of music that really wasn't, it's not peppy. I'm not heard the song. I imagine it's not a peppy, happy song. It's not a
it's definitely
rocker.
it's not a rock song, right? Yeah, it's not a rock song.
Yeah, I remember, hearing Nazareth the first time, like, oh yeah, it's like
Yeah,
they're saying bad words. It's great.
exactly. Well, and that in of itself was the appeal, right? Like
Yeah,
I couldn't believe when that came on. I could, you wouldn't believe it when like the uncensored version of "Who Are You" would come on the radio, and
yeah,
it was
yeah.
like, I can't believe they can say that on the radio.
I don't know. I don't think I've heard it till much later where they obviously purposely uncensored it because they'd had to choose a track that didn't have the censored.
Right.
But then again, I'm sure there's probably college stations and certain AM stations later that were able to get by with that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, and Pink Floyd Money, is, when that would come on.
Yeah, yeah, Run Like Hell is another perfect one for me.
Oh, interesting.
Well, I think I imagine a samurai running through the woods. I don't know
Oh,
why.
interesting.
Yeah, and I imagine these battle. I don't know why I'm not a visual person, but some reason there's some sort of samurai flick going on in my head when I hear that. I and I don't know why. Maybe I was reading Lone Wolf and Cub one day when I was listening to that. I don't know.
So they must have cut the scenes that Bob Geldof filmed of him
Yeah.
doing the as in the samurai from the movie.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's strange. And for gaming, I have for a setting I've created like a soundtrack, and I think for there's one adventure I wrote that I actually used a song for, but other than that, I haven't done that a lot. So I mean, for you, in what ways does music inform your gaming?
Yeah, so some of it is just getting me in the mood to play. So in the Court of the Crimson King by King Crimson, is my ultimate get me in the mood to play a fantasy
Right.
RPG. Um, Me and one of the friends that I play still to this day in our weekly gaming group. When we were in high school, whenever we were going to go make some role master characters, right? And we throw that we put that song on, and now we're we're totally in the mood to.
Those were heady days. I love those days. I wish I could go back to them. Yes, let's play Roll Master. Let's roll on these charts all night long and love it.
we I don't even know how much we ever actually played. We made a lot of characters. We would do have some fights, right? So we could roll the crits, but like there was never a long standing campaign or anything like that. But oh man, we lo- love getting those books, and they had the
Yeah.
Tolkien license. So, picking up those um, source books for them,
I
loved it.
think what kids don't have these days that we did, and that was we faced boredom.
Yeah.
And in the face of boredom, we did some stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't, maybe it doesn't make us better, but I just think when you don't have YouTube or cable TV or all these other things, all you've got is, maybe three or four stations that come on the TV, and that's it. You're in a small town, figure something out. It's like,
Yeah. You had to be able to entertain yourselves. And
yeah. So if it's making roll master characters all day long, that's a lot of fun.
oh yeah, yeah, love doing that. Same with like superhero games. So, um, we would, we were comic book fans, so let's go make up some characters, and then we just draw them, right? Like we
Yeah.
wouldn't even play the game. We would just create the character, spend a ton of time getting, playing champions or something, and getting everything perfectly balanced, spending all of our points, getting the right amount of disadvantages so that we could get the powers that we wanted, and then we wouldn't play. We would then just like, all right, well now let's draw all the characters we just made, and then we'll do it again next time.
So it's interesting because then, so really what was the mini game and not the game
Yeah.
was the inspiration to do another activity.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm not really interested in playing champions. I'm interested in making up characters and then we just do our own thing.
yeah. That was exactly. We definitely played the Champions character creation mini game way more often than we played Champions, and same with Rollmaster.
Well, I think if you were to do, traveler character generation, then you could come up with all sorts of stories.
Absolutely.
How did he
Uh,
die? I don't know. Three terms. Why did he risk it? I don't know. We got to figure this out.
exactly. Another game like that was I don't know if you ever played Daredevils.
No, I've
Um,
seen it, never played it.
yeah, so that one also, had like a life path, um, character creation mechanic to it, and it took place, so it was like a pulpy
Yeah.
type thing. So your character was impacted by World War One in some way. So as you're doing the life path, one of the big parts you had to do is um, what did you do during the war? So, and it was all just, stuff you'd roll. And based on what you got, that similar to Traveler, but that would determine, kind of what's, skills you got and things like that, and professions and different careers that
Oh,
you
so it
went
wouldn't be
through.
like I got scarred by mustard gas or I suffer PTSD.
Not that level of detail. We might come up with our own
Yeah.
explanations for why we, after the war, we became, whatever our next career was.
Yeah.
Uh, but it wasn't that detailed. But I found it really like evocative. Like you kind of finished the character creation and you felt like, yeah, I kind of see that guy, right? Like I can picture him, and it was just fun playing that mini game.
Yeah, and I think there are a number of games that do that fairly well, and probably some less so. And but I think it's kind of interesting how, for a lot of people that is a fun part is playing those mini games. For other people, it's not.
Yeah, and I definitely like in the same way from a music standpoint, like I like lots of genres for my role playing games. It's the same thing in terms of like I like light games, I like crunchy games, I like right. It's just kind of different moods, right? Like,
So I wonder if people who like playing different systems are also the people who like hearing different styles of music.
oh, interesting. I don't know. Is there some sort of common character trait?
Yeah, if somebody says somebody plays D&D all the time, and you can say, "What is your, what do you listen to?" And they'll be like, "Yeah, A's Rock all the way," or whatever it may be. Uh,
Yeah,
I'll,
yeah.
I'll have to I'll have to delve into this the next in a when I'm at conventions and different things.
Yeah, see if you could do some polling. Unfortunately, my ancestry.com profile did not describe any of that. It could tell me whether or not I was likely to like cilantro, but it didn't tell me if I was. I haven't seen one for gaming preferences.
So
Unfortunately,
so do you like cilantro?
I do not. No, um, that is my least favorite. I have the full on reaction that the people who hate it
Oh,
have.
really?
Yes. So it does not, it neither smells nor tastes citrusy or however it's supposed to do to me. It is rather disgusting to me.
Why am I eating dish soap?
Yeah, I know. And that's what they'll say is that that for people who don't like it, it's dish, but it's not a dish soap either to me. It's definitely worse than that. Uh,
You
for
sound
me.
like you have experience with dish soap.
No, that
I've
is
tried
true.
Dawn. I've tried Purell.
Yeah.
I promise you, it's worse than that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm more of a palm olive person myself, but I can see the the comparisons.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that's pretty much gamers are they tend to be people who love one thing and stay with it, and the same thing with music. And I've noticed that as well, and where we just played everything and anything, and I still to this day love playing different games. They provide different experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like we do some stuff that's like I guess you'd call it OSR type
Yeah,
style games, right? So we're rolling up the characters real quick. It's playing a low level deadly game, and it's more player skill than character skill, and the answer's not on your character sheet and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
we definitely play that kind of stuff. But I mean, we play. We've had a long running 5e campaign that it's like more like Critical Role style, right? Like we've got these characters that we were spent time creating and we're super invested in, and they all have voices, and they've been, we've had amazing game sessions with that, and so it's all. I play more probably old style stuff just because it's what I know, but it's all good to me.
no, and I think there are innovations and different games come up with new technologies, and and I think some technologies that are good get dropped, but you know what? I always had the freedom to add those back in.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I like the mini game of of reading new RPG books, right? Like the whole mini game of pledging for something on Kickstarter and getting it and reading it and putting on the shelf, and maybe I don't get a chance to play it, but like uh, no regrets for that either, right? Like it'll inform me in some way, might inspire me.
That's why I tell myself, and I look at the end of the year when I do my taxes, and I do report my books for research purposes. This is my company, but I look at all that money. I'm like, I was supposed to cut back this year, and I just spent $1,000. Like, who in their right mind is doing this? I'm glad I got a hobby that's producing money. Other my wife would be saying, "Why are you spending so much money?" And I think I didn't spend that much money. And I look, and I guess I did.
uh,
It's
didn't feel like
like,
it at the time, but
yeah, it's like next year I'll be better. And then all of a sudden, Coriolis is coming out with a new set, and somebody else has got something to do. I'm like, stop it, people! Stop producing cool stuff.
yeah, it's tough, right? Because it all sounds great, so you want it, and there's a little bit of completionist d- drive for some of these things. Like, there's a new one for this one. I got all the other ones. I
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
keep going.
exactly.
I don't want to be missing one.
Yeah, I like even the Autarchs um for the can't believe I forgot it. It's Adventure Conqueror King,
Yeah.
second edition. Wasn't gonna buy it. Was gonna buy it. Then it's like then they start talking about all these tables and guidance for for making creatures and different things. It's like, well, that might be useful for bestiaries, and that might be useful for this, and it might be useful for that. And I'll get it, but I'm sure when I get it, it's going to require 12 spreadsheets and not be useful. But it's like, yeah, I guess I'm buying it after all. It's
Right, right.
like
That'll be on next year's
my my
spreadsheet.
son my son bought a board game, and he bought all the stuff that came with it, all the add-ons. This was during the COVID years. They're finally fulfilling backer kit. Did the backer kit, $80 in shipping.
Oh man.
It's like I had the money back then because I don't have quite that money. I mean, he
Oh
can afford it, but it's just like it's like
yeah, and the board game stuff can get, I mean, shipping's expensive these days anyways, but like you can get some pretty heavy shipments with some of
yeah,
these board game Kickstarters.
yeah. So there's always that. So yeah, it's and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of other exciting things coming on the horizon. With everybody, it seems like even like Goodman Games just seems to be on a tear as well. I'm not quite so invested in a lot of their stuff, but they really seem to be doing a good job with, especially the most recent, the Purple Planet Kickstarter.
Yeah, that's very cool. Like the way that they've tied in um, multiple, like quite a few third party publishers doing Purple Planet materials at the exact same time. So it's like a set of crowdfunding campaigns all going on concurrently and setting up rewards for people who pledge for multiple ones, right? So if you're pledging for both the Goodman Games one, but then some of these other third party ones, then you get additional, perks of some sort in what you get, which is again, I think another example of just the way that they're very supportive of their third
Oh
party
yeah.
publishers. It's really great.
So I would like to be interested in how that worked out for everybody. I know James Radji did something similar a long time ago, and it was not good.
Oh, really?
Well, he said, okay, I've got 10 titles, the ones that fund we'll do, and the ones that don't, we'll drop. But I think it just watered everything down, and it didn't,
Mm.
have the effect that I think he was hoping for.
One thing that maybe was it just different authors, but he was publishing them?
Yes.
So I think one thing that's a little bit different here, right, is that their other Goodman Games is only publishing their part, and then each of these other ones are published by other. So
Right.
they're all their individual
Right. But I mean, as far as
delivers.
them doing this, they're competing against everybody else. And I don't know for them if it
Oh,
works
I
out
follow
better
what you're
or
saying.
worse.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I don't know.
Because you're on the tail end of you're an add-on. You're not the main thing.
Right.
Or I guess you could be the main. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess if those incentives are, I guess, compelling enough, maybe that offsets you're getting people who would buy that wouldn't normally buy your part to it just to fill out their
Well,
the bingo card. But
Goodman Games is, I mean, they've got their own community, and their behavior of their community is probably different than a lot of other communities.
right, so
So,
it
and
be,
so it's not the same, but it still kind of made me wonder if that was going to be how that's going to work overall for all those smaller publishers.
yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. And they did, they were coming off they did support sponsored with Backer Kit, that indie RPG summit in January, which I thought was really good and had um, definitely got some added to my education on this industry that I've somehow found myself in.
Yeah, I was very because I paid for the $50 for the whatever that was.
Yep, to get the third day and the
Y-
recordings.
Yeah, so the problem I had and was is trying to stream it from my phone. Some things worked well for streaming the audio, but when I tried doing the video, it wasn't working well with my TV. But I ended up
Uh,
downloading them all, so I need to try that out again. But I think there was a number of very good panels, and it was well worth the $50. Some of them I didn't care for as much. I think the problem I had with some of them is I would have liked to have an hour of somebody speaking directly to their experiences rather than kind of mobile people just kind of chit-chatting. And
right,
it's
right.
like, but I think overall for $50, I've got $50, more than $50 worth of value in stuff. And especially for, I think one of the ones I need to listen to or watch is the one for drive-through RPG. And I do not utilize that platform like I should.
Yeah, it was. I thought some of the ones I really enjoyed were ones that broke down their different revenue streams through the different platforms. So the lazy DM, Mike Shea.
Yeah, I've not listened to. I've heard him on podcast, but I did not hear his episode or his whatever that's called yet.
Yeah, his session. He was very forthcoming and just kind of talking about the percentage that he gets from his different um I don't know, use revenue, but revenue streams, right? So he's got Drive Through RPG, and he's got his Patreon, and he's got his YouTube channel, and he's has a mailing list, and right, he kind of mapped out sort of how he sees each one feeding into each other and percent of revenue that comes from each. And there's another one where people who had Patreons and YouTube channels and had Shopify websites versus Drive Through RPG, and they broke down, you know, which how much each of those contributed to the overall pie. And I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that. I've found that since I've been putting stuff regularly on drive through, it tends to it actually produce it gives me better results than I would have thought.
Mm,
And I do have a website, and the revenue I get from that mostly pays for it, more than pays for my website, but it's not a lot. So it's at
okay.
least it's not lucrative. But then I don't have a newsletter. I mean, there's a lot of things for me being so socially silent. I'm just impressed that I'm able to get what I am able to get, just throwing things up.
And I've heard you talk on some of your other podcasts, right? Like that, you've got some at some point would want this to be something that isn't your could be your it's like a
It would
retirement
be
job,
nice.
right?
I don't think it's going to be possible. So so I haven't fully done the taxes, but I probably made about $10,000 last year, and that's with 5 Kickstarters generating like I think it was over $30,000.
Hmm.
So it's not bad, but I've also done 5 Kickstarters. So if I double that, can I support 10 Kickstarters? Probably not. It's like nobody's gonna, it's bad enough. I'm thinking about doing, more than five, but then the thing is, well, I need to get the cost per pledge or the backing per pledge up, and don't lose any subscribers
Hmm.
or not or backers. So
Backers,
it's
yeah.
like it starts turning into this like I don't know. It's a nice thought, um, but I don't know. Short of me coming up with a, let's say, coming up with my own, like say, rule book for a game system, and then having to publish for it on a timely basis. I don't know. I think making $30,000 or more is going to be take a lot.
Hmm. And some of the parts that you're doing are hard to scale up, right? So like you're saying, you can't, it's hard to just can't keep doubling and tripling the number of Kickstarters you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So then, it becomes a different thing. So the other thing I found is this year, so it's what you're trying to do as when you have you're trying to sell things, you're trying to find patterns. You're trying to find trends, trying to find, and it's not easy. And you have to put out a lot of material before you can start seeing those things.
Right.
So the Kickstarters, um, in a sense, they kept doing less and less as far as even number four was, I think, the like one of the lowest of the Kickstarters for Gary's Appendix. But all of a sudden, the one in February is doing fine. It's doing kind of on par where I was before. So now is it time of year?
Yeah.
Is it
Interesting.
just, I was at the point where I've been doing Gary's Appendix 3 times a year. Do I scale it back to twice a year? Am I doing it too much? Because I'm just coming off of one in December. Is this too soon? Do I try and put something else in to see if it's hard to know, and you have a limited amount of time.
Yeah.
Like, where do you put your energies?
And the way you're doing it, right? So you're paying writers and artists to do it. So you have some costs
Yes.
that you have to factor in as you're doing these, even if you think of them as experiments, they're to get more data. It's a lot of you got some costs that have to earn back.
Yeah, it's in general, it's about $3,000 is a break even point for me.
Okay.
And then and then so like if I make $4,000, that doesn't mean I make $1,000 in profit. It might just be a few $100s in profit. The margins get better for me the higher it goes.
Right.
So like if I have 10 Kickstarters at $3,000, I don't make any money. If I have one Kickstarter at $10,000 or at $30,000, then I make, there's a considerable amount of money. So it gets weird, and the way it scales, it's complicated. And so, you know, it comes down to where you want to put your energies, where you put your resources, and what you have available to you. But you need to
Right.
have money in order to be able to pay. Well, unless you kickstart first. But my recommendation is, you know, pay
Not
people
going
up
there.
front. Yeah, I pay people up front before I kickstart. So all the writers, all the artists have been paid for. I just haven't been paid.
Right. Well, clearly the data is showing for you that you need to do fewer of them and have them just be huge successes.
There
So
you go.
now you just need to figure out how to do that.
Well, what's interesting too is like you can look at Kickstarters, and you can also look at some that make a lot of money or they generate a lot of pledges. But when you start looking at the math, it's like it may not be that they did that well.
Right, right. Was it really profitable? Even though it was a lot of re
Yes.
revenue, it may not have actually been profitable.
Right, because $50,000 may seem like a lot, but then when like I didn't back it, but Dragon Slayer by Greg Gillespie, I can't sound his name right. Even though I did a layout for one of his books. He I can't remember what he finally funded at. It might have been like it was like $40,000, but he's got a lot of art. He paid for a lot of art.
Hmm.
And it's like, even if you can get it as low as $50 per piece, when you have that much art, it adds up pretty quickly. And then editors and all this other stuff, and then buying the books and shipping, it's it's a lot.
Yeah, it seems like, I mean, the art economics are seem to be tough for everybody, right? Like it's tough for the, in your case, right, the publisher, right? Because there seems to be an expectation of quantity and quality of art. And as a
Yes.
consumer, I have that same expectation, right? I love the art, right? Like when you get a great looking zine, right? It's so cool.
Yes, and then you have to, as a publisher, you have to look at like even like, you know, do I pay how much do I pay for this cover, and will it give me the rate of return? And it sounds like it's just straight economics. I don't want to be, but you just have a limit on a budget. And there's a point where it's like, I need to do better than break even
Right.
for me to continue doing things.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have to always be, I guess, making those decisions, right? It's a compromise.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's just yeah, and trying different things. But are you planning on putting out more zines, more adventures?
Yeah, so I'm working on the second zine, and it's taken me longer than I expected. One, because I started doing this newsletter and podcast, which is sucking up all of my free time, my discretionary time that I would normally have been working on it. And but I really enjoy. Obviously, the music is very important to me. I wanted to have something that I could research as much as I want to, because that's a big fun part to me. So I do have in progress the next zine. It's going to be one that from a music standpoint has largely influenced by both an older band and a contemporary band. So it's Jethro Tull and the band Green Lung, which is a current kind of people would overgeneralize and call them like a stoner band, but they're a UK band that heavily influenced by like folk horror, um, movies and things like that. And both Jethro Tull and Green Lung wrote material that was influenced by the same book, a book on myths and legends in the UK that was a Reader's Digest published book in like the 1970s. And
Isn't
so I
that
found this
crazy?
connection between the two of them. And so I'm calling it, this is my Aqua Green Lung issue to kind of combine Aqua Lung, the Jethro Tull song, and Green Lung, the band. And I've got content that I'm writing that's along those lines, but I'm not rushing it. Like, it's another one that I want to be very happy with it, have it totally done, have it be the quality that I'm really aiming for. That it's got. I'm still doing the music magazine parody stuff for it as well, and
The
when
thing
it's
is,
done, I
this is
will
not the
kick.
main thing for you.
No, I
So it sounds like the newsletter has turned to being
I
the
think
thing.
it is. It has become the main thing. The podcast is becoming more of a thing, and
But it allows you to express more because because you have to narrow your words and everything and craft it where you can, if you have things you want to say.
yes, that's right. So, and I can, it has more of the stuff that I am good at, and it has more of the stuff that I enjoy doing. So there's, I don't want to say this in a way that um, would diminish anything else that's out there, but like for me personally, I am not interested in all the different music dungeons I can write, right? Like I don't want to do anything that is sort of obvious, right? I want to do heavily researched things that are really aligned to the deep fans, the hardcore fans of those bands. And
No
so when I
Baltor and the Snow Dog or anything
well,
like that.
exactly, yeah, exactly. So you could do, Rush, right? So if you were being commercial about it, Rush is like the biggest, has the most passionate fan base that overlaps with gamers. Okay, so there's Rush has passionate fans, and a lot of them play games. Um, but like you could do Bytor and the Snow Dog and the Necromancer and stuff like that. And it's like it's just so obvious,
Right.
and it's not interesting to me at all to do. And I love Rush. I mean,
Right, right.
I've um, I'm a very deep Rush fan, but it's not going to do it. So there's actually very few of these types of projects um, that I'm probably going to be interested in doing. Whereas I'm I keep not running out of things to just talk about in general, the intersection of music and RPG. So I feel like that's a deeper well for me. Um, and I do have more, both I would say, um, experience and opportunities on the and even connections on the music side than I do on the RPG side. So I've got several ideas that really interest me that I want to expand more than that I can't cover in just the newsletter. So to do a longer form thing that would be on a single topic, whether that's a more produced podcast episode, so not like an interview, but an
Right.
actual presenting of information or a YouTube video, that's or a book or a book. Those are the things that I keep coming up with more and more things that I want to do in those areas than I have adventure ideas or to do that. So I do think that the newsletter and the podcast and probably some videos are going to be the main thing.
Well, to me, what's interesting, and I think things that people should consider is this started out with an idea for doing some sort of RPG publication.
Mhm.
But then by going through that, you found really what you were looking for. That wasn't the main thing you were looking for, but it led you to what you were really looking for.
Yeah. Thank you for saying it that way, because that
Yeah.
actually frames it for me better than even how I've been thinking about it. That's exactly right. Um,
And that's why I think people should pursue things because you don't know what can come out of it. Whether it's success or failure doesn't really matter, but the act of doing it opens you to new experiences, new people, new thinking, and may take you into directions that you never would have considered before.
yeah, you're exactly right, Jeff. And it's I could not have gotten to this place if I hadn't gone down that path, right? Like that was the path I needed to go down
Yeah.
to go through the discovery of this thing that when it's been just so rewarding to me. I have so much fun writing the newsletter, and I've met so many like-minded souls for having done that than I ever would have for really anything else. And the idea of continuing to just grow my personal community, not like capital C community, but just
Right.
like my personal set of connections that of people who I game and play, talk music with, is so life enhancing to me and it's very energizing.
It's
Uh,
like a positive version of message in a bottle.
That's really,
Instead of being a sad song, it's like, oh yeah, all these people are like, hey, yay,
that's right.
identify, let's talk.
That's right. I'm now getting my 100 million bottles washed up on the shore of all these other people. It's like, I like music and games too. Where have you been?
And I think the thing too is it's easy to think all of us are able to, it's easy to fall into the trap of we're alone, but we're not. There are people out there that are like-minded. It's just a matter of finding your tribe.
Yeah, yeah. And Travis Miller, who you work with
Yeah.
all the time. He was I didn't know him. I had heard him on your
Yeah.
podcast, but I had, when I first set up my little critical hit parader Twitter account, and again, I'm not doing hardly anything there, but I just and put the Kickstarter out. Like he reached out right away, sent me a little direct message, and and so then he was first guest on the show, and right, and has recommended music for me that I've loved, and so right, I've now met a person I wouldn't have met if I hadn't gone down this journey.
He is a gem of a person.
Yes, absolutely. He's absolutely, and I feel thankful for having got to meet him through this.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of amazing the people, the connections, and it's we may not be like friends in the capital F friends, but it's there is a connections that are made that are, like you say, very positive, and who knows where they can lead.
Yeah, and ultimately, that to go back to your point earlier, right? We're only here a short time, and some of us are longer into that journey than others, and so and we never, and none of us know until we know when it's going to end, and you know, um, I'm at the point where I just want to spend time with uh, positive people who we share something in common, and that's really all I need to get out of life. My wife's been through unbelievable sets of um, health situations. She's a cancer survivor. She's an 8-time
Yeah.
stroke survivor, a multiple brain surgery survivor. I'm so thankful for every minute that I get to that we get to have together, and I all I want to do is to just enjoy whatever time all of us have
You're
together.
right, because you could lament, you could, more than a lot of us, the stuff you're going through, but that's just wasting the time that you do have with somebody you love.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, absolutely. And she's in some ways, it was a there's a blessing to everything, right? And if you choose to take it,
right.
and we got to learn very early in our marriage, because it's been a very long journey, um, how short life is, and how fragile it is. That we've said goodbye several times, right? And it hasn't. We've had a miracle. Several miracles happen. Um, but it helped our marriage, right? Like we don't have time for any stupid
Right.
petty stuff to argue about. Like we're so past that, right? And it's just so appreciative to get to be together, and we don't, it's just sharing the same space in a room together is all we need. So
Well, I mean, the thing is, you live with you're aware of the reality that we all have, right? But we just don't realize it.
that's right.
My wife may not have this or that, but who knows what, as far as a car accident or stroke, or you just don't, things are out of your control. And, we assume that things are going to be forever, but they're not. We're
Yeah,
not guaranteed anything.
no, no. The only thing we're guaranteed is we won't be here forever.
We will not be here forever.
Yep. And yeah, so I just want to play, right? Just I know, play good games, play good music, play with the
Yep,
people you love.
exactly. I agree. I think it's probably would have been a potentially downer note. We'll end on a positive note.
Yeah. Yeah. So as I mentioned, I'm a fan of the show. So I've been so looking forward for when you're going to tell me that we're about to hit the space-time continuum.
Okay,
So
Matt, I think we're about ready to hit the space-time continuum.
I think you're right, Jeff.
And I really appreciate you coming on. It's been it's hard to tell how long these will go. And I usually try and find a good breaking point, and I guess we kind of did after over 2 hours. But I think it's only my age and me getting older and needing to go to bed soon is probably the only thing that's the hindrance from us continuing.
We all have that. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. very thankful for you having me on the show, and I'm so glad we got to talk face to face, Jeff.
You know, the funny thing is you know, we didn't know each other before this, but I just you're doing interesting things, and I thought, you know what, it's got to be a good time having you on. So I really wasn't sure, but it seems like almost everybody who's doing interesting things are interesting people to talk about or talk with, I should say. So anyway, thanks again, and I'll have to have you on sometime in the future.
Would love to do it. Thanks, Jeff.
All right, take care.